Hello out there, everybody. This is Daniel Parker with USARK Florida, and we're just getting started here. I'm going to just start by pinning our Cash App. So if you're interested in donating to us at any point or want to pay for a shirt or anything, you'll be able to see that. Adding Jay as a moderator there. Got some people joining. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much, Jay at Jay's ReptaLife, for helping us out by moderating tonight. He's helped us in so many ways. He helped us a few weeks ago. He raised over $7,000 for USARK Florida, which was really amazing. He did a 24-hour challenge where he spent over 24 hours. I was over 24 hours in a lizard cage in his backyard. And people donated throughout the thing, and it was just great. And Jay, we really appreciate everything you do. I'm going to bring on some folks here. I'm going to bring on our Florida, Elizabeth Wisneski. And she should pop up here. There's Elizabeth. Hey, how you doing, Elizabeth?
Hey, guys. Wonderful. How are you this evening?
Doing all right. Hold on, let me adjust my phone. I could barely hear you. Barely hear you there.
There we go.
Okay. And let me bring on President of the Georgia Reptile Society, Justyne Lobello. She should be on in just a minute. Oh, I didn't pin the... Hey, Justyne, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Hi there.
All right.
You guys talk amongst yourselves real quick. I need to pin a comment here.
Wonderful. Hey, Justine, how are you this evening?
Good, how are you doing?
Long day, but wonderful to be here.
Yeah, same.
Mm-hmm.
I've been wanting to get you guys together.
Well,
Very excited to have you here.
Got us. So you guys are getting the same stuff that we're having in Florida now, aren't you?
For a second, I had to adjust my brightness. What were you saying?
Yeah.
One more time?
I said Georgia's starting to have the same effects that we've had here in Florida.
Don't say that.
Oh,
I hope not.
I know.
I hope not.
I hope not.
I would say that what we've got going on isn't nearly as invasive, no pun intended, as what you guys have experienced from the government. So I'm hoping we can keep it that way.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got some folks saying our hearts go out to you in Florida. Thank you so much. We've had a lot of people here in Florida who have it's been a struggle the last few weeks for sure, and luckily I wasn't in the worst affected areas. Elizabeth was a little, I think, in a worse area than me, and then the further south you go, it just gets worse and worse. So I had a tree down on the power line going to my house in the middle of the night, which was kind of scary, but we did all right. My turtle enclosures got damaged a little bit by wind. I'm still kind of discovering things that got damaged. And Elizabeth, you had some threats from some trees, right?
Yes, I had a tree about going down on my ball python building. I think my husband thought I was crazy when we were out there in 70-mile-an-hour winds and pulling it away from my building and cutting it down with chainsaws. So, but my babies are safe.
Yeah, gotta keep the babies safe.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we definitely have some folks who are in a lot worse shape, and our heart goes out to them. We're communicating with them. I mean, some people in South Florida lost everything pretty much. So yeah, it's definitely
I'm still
a struggle.
getting updates. It's horrible. I mean, people still don't have power. I mean, even one of our board members just got power back last week, and he doesn't even have good cell phone service yet. We were supposed to have a board meeting this week, and we postponed it till next week so that we could try to all be together. And a lot of our, people in Florida have tremendous amount of damage, and the flooding is just, it's been horrible. It's just catastrophic is a good word. My heart is broke for so many people.
Yeah, it is. It's a catastrophe. Well, let's we have a few others that may join us a little later on, but I guess let's just kind of get started here. The reason I wanted to do this is because we have some issues popping up in Georgia, somewhat similar to what we've seen in Florida, and I know, Justyne, you hope it's not going to be. But first of all, why don't you introduce yourself, Justyne, and tell us a little bit about the Georgia Reptile Society and what you guys have going on up there.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Justyne Lobello. I founded the Georgia Reptile Society, which is the state herpetological society for the state of Georgia back in 2012. So it's been 10 years. In those 10 years, we've had thousands of members. Right now, we have about 300 active members. Those are members that pay their dues and renew. Right now, there's actually an event going on that I have volunteers at. For it's a Halloween themed event, and that's what we mainly do is we actually go around the state to events and just bring our animals out there. None of the animals are owned by the group. They're all people's personal pets, and we just do boots on the ground education, responsible pet ownership. We do have a licensed rescue. In fact, I think we're one of the only licensed reptile only rescues in the state through Department of Agriculture. We work closely with DNR and have been for this entire time. I've got multiple licenses through DNR to do what I do because we have weird laws, which I'll get into later. But yeah, so I also do the marketing for VivTech products. Some of you guys may have seen VivTech around. It's the new company that Ryan and Erica McVeigh have started. He worked at Zilla for many years. So I do that. And I also have a marketing consulting company that specializes in the animal industry. So I actually do marketing and business and consulting for keepers, curators, zoos, and aquariums, but I can do it for other verticals. And I've been working in marketing my entire life. Yep, that's my. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Thanks for the plug. Shameless plug.
She does everything.
If you need a website, if you need marketing consulting, business consulting, I'm your girl.
That's awesome.
But what I do with the Georgia Reptile Society, I started it with nothing, like $300, got the business license, and here we are, like 10 years later, going strong. Yeah, we've got some great leadership in the group. And when all of this happened, DNR reached out to me directly. Actually, Daniel Sollenberger, who is the state herpetologist, called me and told me about what was going on. And but I don't want to give away everything here at the beginning. So, but yeah, I have about, just in case, because people are going to wonder, I have about 40 animals of my own, all different species. I'm mostly known in the community for breeding rosy boas. I haven't done it in a while because of Georgia Reptile Society, but I know all the localities rosy boas. I love rosy boas a lot, which is why my
awesome.
name is
I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that.
Is the scientific name for the most of the coastal rosy boas. They have that in their scientific name, and if you look at my logo, it looks like the back of a rosy boa. So
that makes sense. Yeah, your business name and everything makes sense now. So awesome.
And if you see our logo, it's got the "Don't Tread on Me" snake. It, like the Gadsden snake is in our logo, and that's by design. So we were founded, and what's funny, this is funny. The reason the Georgia Reptile Society was founded in the first place is because I was breeding boas, like rosy boas and boa constrictors. And I was at a Repticon show back in 2000 and probably 2010. And there was a law similar to this going out. They wanted to ban Burmese because of everything else going on nationally. And there's still a lot of talk about that. And so it didn't pass, obviously. But I found that there was a giant hole in the state. There wasn't a herp society that could, answer all of these questions, or someone that DNR or other organizations could go to for advice. So that's why I founded the Georgia Reptile Society. I actually called Ryan. I knew Ryan before he was at Zilla, and he had started the Madison Area Herp Society in Wisconsin. And I just asked him how to do it. And he said, you just have to do it and not stop doing it, because it's
right.
It's very, very hard to run a herp society. And it's been a challenge. And there were a lot of times that I just wanted to give up, but we didn't. And yeah, so.
Well, herp societies have been a struggle everywhere. I mean, with the internet becoming more and more prominent in our society, people just aren't getting together in person as much, unfortunately. But yeah, so that's commendable that you've kept this thing going. And I should point out, I'm broadcasting from my friend's restaurant. I think she just burned herself or something. So if you saw me react, are you okay, Dawn?
I heard a little yelp, and I wasn't sure what it was.
Yeah.
Oh, she was reacting to something in the Florida game, in the Gator game. So I thought she burned herself.
As long as
it might have been a burn.
Yeah. So yes, we thank Dawn. Dinner's ready. Am I getting that right? Yeah. Dinner's ready in Dade City. If you guys ever want to stop by, Dawn lets me broadcast from her restaurant/studio here. She has better internet than I have at home. So anyway.
But one other thing I want to add to people who are listening is, through my my consulting business, we actually have a co-op program that we're starting for herp societies. And we're also working with a couple of other big name past presidents of herp societies around the nation, and hoping to do a national society that is going to help cultivate herp societies so that they don't have to stop, so that they don't have to do it alone, because that's been the struggle. Is I was on my own island. Thankfully, I had Ryan and a couple of other presidents to kind of reach out to, but herp societies would come and go. And everyone does things differently. We don't have meetings. We just do events and get together at the events. But we feel like that education is more important than sitting down and chatting, which we do. But we call it GRS After Dark. It's just a little thing we do. But anyways.
And you've encouraged people who are running herp societies now to get in touch with you also, right? So you guys can coordinate. Yeah, I think we're down to like 2 or 3 people involved.
Yeah, Florida needs a good one. And I've seen both state herp societies and like regional ones. And I guess it really just depends on where you're at. But like, I wanted to do the whole state because I live in if you put a pin in the middle of Georgia, that's where I am. That's my house. I'm in the very center of the state. So everything's the same distance for me. But it's just, when it comes to these kind of laws that might come up, I know that we're not a political organization, but we definitely are an influence on these things. Like DNR reached out to us because we've gone to pretty much every event, educational event, and we don't charge for what we do. It's totally a labor of love. Like, me and the volunteers have given thousands of dollars of our own money, and I don't even know how many hours of our own time to do these events, just because we want us to be visible. And when people think of reptiles, they think of Georgia Reptile Society, and they reach out. So, and here we are. Like, this is a pretty big deal, and they did call me. So
yeah, and that's, Elizabeth and I talk about this all the time. Some of the stuff you do is what we would love to be doing. We're both passionate about education and using animals for education, and we sure wish we could have time to do more of that here in Florida. Unfortunately, it's just been one battle. Yeah, it's just one battle after another.
Well, you guys are on the political battle side, and thankfully Georgia's not there, and hopefully we'll never get there. So right now I'm still an education person coming in as a more of a consultant, right? I'm coming in, DNR's calling me because we've been there for them so many times. I have so many stories. And they value our opinion because they know that we hold influence in the community, and not just the reptile community, but like local police stations, local fire stations, local animal shelters. Like, we're very connected. And if something hurts us, then people will talk about it. So it took a decade to get here, guys. It wasn't something that happened overnight. But one thing that I'm seeing, like starting a national herp society, is I will eventually step down as president and let someone else take that on, because I do want to get more involved in the political side. But that's the only thing I would say is if you wanted to do a herp society, the politics would have to, there would have to be a clear separation there,
Right.
being a 501c3 organization. But this is as involved as I can get. I'm going there doing a speech on behalf of a committee that we formed that's GRS and some very big popular breeders. Georgia has some of the biggest breeders in the nation. It's actually pretty incredible. Wish we had corn snakes. That would just put the little cherry on top. But again, we can talk about that too.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess we'll get into kind of the meat of what we're talking about. As most of you probably know, we have now what's called a prohibited species list in Florida. And I have the list in front of me here. On that list is yellow anaconda, Benny anaconda, O'Shaughnessy's anaconda, brown tree snake, Indian and Burmese python, reticulated python, all the African rock pythons, amethystine python, scrub python, green anaconda, Nile monitor, green iguana, and all of the tegus. And that is currently, and also sea snakes are on there. So that's currently the Florida prohibited species list. So the deal in Georgia, as it is right now, it's a little bit unusual in that all native non-venomous snakes are protected, and they have been since the 70s. People aren't allowed to keep those as pets. So things that we consider just common species in the pet trade, like corn snakes, king snakes, at least eastern king snakes, rat snakes, things like that, pine snakes, anything that's native to Georgia, those snakes you're not allowed to keep. But at the same time, venomous snakes aren't protected, right? And you had rattlesnake roundups until just recently. I guess, I don't know if I should go there now. We can talk about that in a little bit, but I'll get right onto what's going on in Georgia. So you have rules that are proposed by DNR now that are kind of proposing like a prohibited species list. And the reptiles that are on here are Indian rock python, Burmese python, Argentine black and white tegu, Nile monitor, and then African helmeted turtle and Chinese softshell turtle, which I'm particularly confused by. But those are, I printed this all out earlier. So this is from the Georgia DNR. So that's the proposed species. So tell me, Justyne, how did you get involved in this process, and who are the people? You talked about it a little bit, but who are the people that you're helping to represent here, and what's this process going to be going forward?
So I was actually a member who is connected with DNR as well, reached out to me and said, hey, Daniel, the state herpetologist, wants to talk to you about this ruling, which I just heard about a few days prior. And I didn't panic because, again, it's not like they would announce it and then pass it that week. It would be a few months. So talked to Daniel. We went through the list, and he said, look, I want your opinion on this. We tried to make it fair. We put in a grandfather clause we think is very fair. And I said, I haven't had a chance to really digest this, but I will say, like, obviously I'm opposed to it, like right off the bat, because these aren't a big problem in the state, Now, it depends on who you talk to, right? There is an animal educator, I won't name names, but he has seen all of the bad stuff. He actually deals with the raids and anything else, like where, you've heard it before, like the people that are breaking the laws are not people like me or people like you. Mm-hmm. They're people who don't care about animals and are probably doing a lot of other really horrible things, like, drugs, that sort of thing. So that's the kind of stuff this person would see, and that his bias would be based on that. My, I guess my non-bias is I do know those things happen, but they're very rare. And like I hear about them almost never. So I thought it was interesting. I did tell him it was interesting that it was very specific, that he could have blanket put all the big snakes on there. He could have, yeah, usually, like Greg just said in the comments, most of the people who break the laws are from out of state. That's 100% true. Yes. And actually, I can name a couple of people off the top of my head that have broken laws that are from other states that come here for refuge from Florida and end up breaking laws here, but they're already bad people. Like, and we as a community know who they are. And all those other outliers, like, doesn't happen.
Most people often from Florida are not criminals either, though.
But that's why they're leaving. They're leaving Florida, right? Because they don't want to follow the rules that Florida has, and some of that's for good reason, like it's their pets, they don't want to be there. Mm-hmm. But most of them are not obeying the laws when they come here. Yeah. I mean, anyway. I should point out that we do have people who have left Florida because of our laws, but just so they could continue to operate their business legally. Because we have their economic refugees. I mean, they had, you know, thousands or millions of dollars invested into their businesses and animals, which are livestock, and they couldn't continue to operate here. Mm-hmm. So they've kind of had to flee the state or end their businesses. Nope, don't blame them. And they're not breaking any laws. And I want to rephrase that. What I said earlier is we have people from Florida who are already breaking laws. Then it gets like there's more lockdown on those laws in Florida, so they come here and they're just as bad here. They're really they shouldn't. But again, we know who these people are and we get involved. GRS has been involved in, like, there was a guy years ago that released a bunch of ball pythons, and we went down there and actually got pythons out of the wild, and we had to go around to like the old people communities that were being actually targeted by bad insurance agents that were trying to take advantage of them and saying, these animals might attack you, they could bite you. And we were going around passing out pamphlets saying, no, they're not dangerous, they're harmless. You know, you can call us, you can call animal control. So anyway, we've had to do stuff like that before, but again, it hardly ever happens. In 10 years, maybe there's been 6 incidents of this that I can think of.
I read your kind of speech earlier, and I won't go too far into that because I know it's not done yet. But one thing that you brought up that I thought was a good point is that DNR, and it's the same with our FWC, they handle hunting and fishing, and there are hunting and fishing violations all the time, right? It's one of the main things they deal with, but it doesn't mean that they try to end hunting and fishing. They issue tickets when it's applicable. So we don't see like presentations from our FWC about all the people they're giving fishing license tickets to, even though it is a substantial number. And they're not talking about banning fishing all the time. So they are a regulatory agency. Yes, there are always going to be people that break rules, and they have to deal with those, but that's kind of their job as an agency. And it seems with reptiles that they always want to take this shortcut of just, well, let's just ban it all so we don't have to deal with it.
And it's not a ban, but it's close enough to be a ban, right? A normal person would be
but that's the first option is what I'm saying, is that and have they, with these species on this list, have they demonstrated specific issues with all of these species? Because I mean, is there a risk of establishment?
The Tegus is the only one that I would say there's some concern there, but they've found actual pockets of populations that they've dealt with, and this has been going on for years. But they're not like widely distributed or anything like that. In fact, our community is willing to go in and take care of that and help as much as possible if that ever were to occur. But you can, that's what I wanted to bring up too. You see this listing very specifically, it's an Argentine black and white tegu. They could have added red tegus, they could have added golden tegus. They're just as invasive, but they didn't. And that's because they didn't want it to be this big blanket thing. That's not what their goal was. You brought up a good point. There's fishing and hunting licenses and rule breaking, and they'll deal with that, right? There's nothing for these. There's no license, there's no regulation, there's nothing. So they want to make a regulation. That's really what this comes down to. And that's why I want to propose something different than this, because this is not a good solution. This is really a ban. I mean, I would be able to get the license of the licenses I already have, but most people couldn't. And then you're grandfathering in, I don't even know how many animals you're going to be grandfathering in, because there is a grandfather clause here, but they only have one person that issues these licenses. That person's already underwater. So I brought that up to them in the meeting I had individually with them, that they just don't have the staff to deal with this, even if they pass it. And it's not solving the problem with their law enforcement agency doesn't have good funding, and neither does their wildlife resources division. And this, even with the licenses, whatever that wild animal permit is, can't be enough to help them out. But there has to be a solution, because DNR is not our enemy. We've been working with DNR for a very long time, and we want to help them. And I've loved dealing with the Georgia DNR in the past. We've talked about this. We've dealt with some of the same people in the office, and I've gotten a permit in like 20 minutes. Yeah. I mean,
it's crazy.
I know, Elizabeth, isn't that just stunning? Like, you can call up somebody that you get the same person every time you call.
Same person.
You submit an application, you can email it to her, and she has you a permit back in like 20 minutes. It's amazing.
I'm still waiting on one from April.
Yeah.
Hey, it's true.
That was my fear when I talked to Daniel. I said, I'm afraid that you're going to open up a can of worms, and you're going to have the problem that Florida's having, where everybody wants permits. Yeah, Jamie does rule. Yeah, I didn't want to say her name, but I will. Jamie is awesome if you're listening.
Yeah, that was who I was talking about also. Yeah.
She's been there forever. She's fantastic. But if they lose, like, there's not very many Jamies. If you've worked corporate America, you know this. There are a couple of Jamies out there, but once you lose a Jamie and you replace it with a normal 9 to 5 person, good luck finding the same kind of customer service.
Yeah.
So we can't rest our shoulders on Jamie. She's just one person. But I'm just afraid of like licenses being delayed and people not getting them in time, and then all of a sudden they can't keep their animals, like what's happening in Florida right now.
And what you have to be concerned with also is when something like this starts. In Florida, they just started the prohibited species with the yellow anaconda. And it didn't get a huge reaction because there weren't a large number of people that kept anacondas in the state. But at that time, that's what they started with. And we had what was called a conditional species program for like Burmese pythons. And we had reptile people in the state who were asking at that time to put, I think this was like 2010, 2009, something like that, who wanted to add tegus to this conditional species program at that time. And what the conditional species program was a regulated system. You had to get inspected. You had to have your animals microchipped. You had to have caging standards. But it still allowed people to keep these animals that were qualified to work with them. And
they were very stringent rules, but they were able to be worked with 100%. And Daniel, let's go back to when they started. That's when industry and FWC worked together under prior leadership. And it was wonderful. Industry is the one who recommended all these rules.
Yeah.
So we worked together.
So we had a system that kind of addressed some of these issues, but it was kind of a political push a few years ago. You know, when you keep having pythons pop up in the news over and over, it becomes a political thing. Like, what are you doing to address this problem? Well, we had a program to address this problem, and there was no evidence that there was like new python escapes happening. But because the news kept covering it, the politicians felt pressure to address this problem. So they came up with something new that was much more restrictive and kind of draconian. And unfortunately, like they told us, well, if you have these animals, you'll be able to keep them. We're not trying to take anybody's pets away. And that's flat out proven not to be true here. Unfortunately, we know a lot of people could not comply with the standards that they set. To keep an iguana or tegu outside here, you had to build like a $10,000 enclosure that's more stringent requirements than what they have for big cats or anything even. And a lot of times their requirements conflicted with what FEMA was requiring for hurricanes and stuff like that. So a lot of people just couldn't comply. And also, if FWC chose to reject your license, then they could come confiscate your animals. So you had to be approved for a license, and they, on a case-by-case basis, have denied licenses, and they've gone and confiscated animals. And we know that that's happened. So we should be able to work together with our regulatory agencies on these things, but you're scared to even let them get their foot in the door because we've seen what it's led to in Florida. And I certainly hope in Georgia you can come up with a system that, you know, if there has to be some kind of system, it's regulated, but it doesn't completely ban things.
Yeah. So we do have a proposal for them. That is a regulation. It's a registration system instead of this. And it's really about making sure that animals aren't escaping. That's really what it comes down to. We don't want animals in the wild. Well, we know, like anecdotally, that people in the community aren't going to do that. But if it makes DNR happy, then we can do that. We can do this. And I've had some pushback.
Yep.
I've had people say, I don't want that at all. I don't want anything. I'm like, of course we don't want anything. But, you know, if we don't do something, then it's going to be a ban. And it's a lot harder to change a law that's already there than to introduce, like, where there's a gap. It's really easy to do that. So, no, we've brought that up to them. They were amicable to it. But again, like, it all hinges on this October 25th meeting. That's where they're voting on this ruling. So that meeting that I had was... Is
this DNR, because this is going to go into a bill in the legislature, right? Am I correct?
This is a rule that I think will just get implemented. So this is not a bill. This is not a law.
I thought things had to go through the legislature in Georgia.
I don't believe in this instance it doesn't. Now, if I want to change the law, which needs to be changed, that is more involved. That I'm going to need a lawmaker. I'm going to need someone to sponsor a bill to get that changed. But the ruling is something that will go into effect. If on this October meeting, if it gets ruled, yes, let's do it, they will push it. They'll push it.
So are they actually voting that day?
They are.
Wow. So you're speaking representing reptile keepers, that stakeholder group at this meeting, and it could be passed that day.
Could be passed that day. I have like every fiber of my being thinks it will not pass, simply because it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I know. I don't think it will pass.
I'm sorry to be cynical here.
I know. I'm thinking the same thing, but I'm just going to be quiet right now.
Yeah, if it passes, then we're going to, you know, if Phil's listening, Phil, we're going to get our money's worth out of you, bud, because we're going to need you to help us fight it. And that would be our goal, to change the law and overwrite what they just did if they do pass it. But so the two scenarios are, if they pass it, then we're going to fight it, obviously. If they don't pass it, then we're going to help them create a solution for regulation that the community approves of and that hopefully other states can actually adopt. This is something that I talked to Phil about quite extensively, and it's not just us, right? It's not just Florida and Georgia. It's all of the 13 southeastern United States that we really got to pay attention to, because this is just the start. If it doesn't pass, then we need to come up with a solution. But I also want to update the current state law. It doesn't make any sense. And what they're doing here is trying to protect native wildlife while they're not protecting native wildlife with the current law. The current law, it protects species like corn snakes, which are definitely not threatened and definitely not endangered, while you can go out and kill a diamondback rattlesnake or a coral snake without any repercussions, and they're pretty much gone. So back to the rattlesnake roundups, by the way, there are no more.
Yeah, I wanted you to talk about that. So talk a little bit about your involvement with the rattlesnake roundup situation in Georgia, because I think this is such a great example of how people who are passionate about reptiles, who are reptile keepers, can be involved in conservation and the welfare of animals in the wild too. And I think it's so commendable the involvement that you and your organizations had with rattlesnake roundups in Georgia.
Awesome. Yeah. And we got a question about who's sponsoring the bill. There is no bill right now. This is a ruling. So it's not a law. It's not a bill. It's just a ruling they're tacking on. It kind of can slip through a little easier. So just so you guys know, that's why this one's a little dire, because they could just do this without a lot of, check.
That's the way it all works in Florida, right? Florida right now. So our commission just votes on rules.
So back to the rattlesnake roundup thing. So when we started the GRS, one of the first things I did was actually attend the Wiggum rattlesnake roundup, which is like basically Florida, super south Georgia. And the one I actually wrote an article about it. It was on our website for a while. It's been taken down since. But basically there were no rattlesnakes, and the ones that I did see, you could tell were captured from a lot of different states. Even though they were claiming they were all local, and and there was actually a pamphlet that I got that showed the sizes, like the lengths of the animals and the weights of the animals over time, and they just kept dwindling down and down and down and down over the years, right? And the reason that these festivals or these roundups were so important to these communities at the time is because that was the only source of income they really had every year to keep like their local Boy Scout troop going. It was very important to the community, and it was a traditional thing for them to hunt.
And these are tiny towns, right? This is not, I mean, Georgia, when you're in South Georgia, a lot of times each county has like kind of one small or medium-sized town in the whole county, and then a couple tiny towns that you don't even notice if you pass through. Yeah.
So when I went, I wrote that article, and it was actually met with a couple of negative emails. One of them from a gentleman who I won't name, but he threatened to sue me personally because I was threatening his business, because he would take these rattlesnakes and milk them on his back porch and sell that rattlesnake venom science, which I'm like, seriously doubt that. I'm pretty sure you need to be in a laboratory setting. But there was also a guy that went on stage and was talking about all these animal rights groups want to shut us down. This is our tradition. And I'm like, I was standing in the audience. I'm like, I'm not an animal rights activist. I just know that there's a better way. We could celebrate wildlife without destroying it, So I went, and I didn't go back until this year, actually. It is no longer a roundup. It is a festival. And that is very much because of DNR. DNR is the one that wanted to change these roundups into festivals. They changed Claxton a few years before the GRS was formed into a festival. And that's why they would call on us to be there, because they're like, we need bodies. We need organizations there with snakes. We need people to bring rattlesnakes in for people to see. Otherwise, they're going to go back out and get these animals because there's no law protecting them. DNR knows this, right? So those rattlesnake roundups, these past couple ones were a little volatile. I won't go into details, but this is the time to change the law and to protect these animals, because if we don't do something, these communities will go back to what they were doing before, gassing gopher tortoise burrows, putting snakes in boxes for weeks or months to emaciate them and get them so weak that they can't fight back so that they can do things with them on stage. Like, those are the kind of, it's not as barbaric as like Sweetwater, Texas, but it's animal cruelty. And it's these animals like diamondback rattlesnakes are becoming endangered. And I just, I get very emotional when I talk about it, but there's a reason why I'm pushing for, 6 years ago, I went to DNR to try to propose something. I went there and asked for corn snakes to be legal again and to protect native venomous. And the commissioner at the time, he's no longer the commissioner now, said that nobody cares about rattlesnakes, so they're not going to do anything about it. That was what I was told. So we really, like, as a community, I think need to come together and push that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, even if they do pass this, I'm not scared, because we're going to fight that law anyway. I hope that we can meet them on a playing field, like where they didn't pass it and we can discuss it instead of fighting. Right. And that's
and I talked to our kind of our legal advisor on the way here, and he was saying they have to look at things like what's happened in Florida. It could have been so much easier if they just consulted us in the beginning and taken our point of view into consideration, because now we're in a lawsuit with FWC. And, you know, this is like the third lawsuit of reptile keepers against the state of Florida in some capacity in the last few years. So all of this stuff is costing taxpayer money. It's costing tons of our money and normal people and business owners money. There's got to be a better way. So I certainly hope that you guys are able to work something out so it doesn't have to come to that. But, you know, I hope that you're also able to impart to them that that's something that could happen. I mean, you're looking at all options. So
yeah, no, they're aware. I mean, I played devil's advocate with those guys when I was talking to them. You know, they were like, well, we can add diamondbacks and coral snakes maybe because they're in danger, but not the other ones. I'm like, but you protect corn snakes. That's an invalid argument. But they all deserve protection. Yeah. Honestly, I don't want it to be legal for a 10-year-old to go out and capture a venomous snake, put it in a 10-gallon aquarium and put it on their kitchen table. And that's totally fine.
Which it is. It is now.
That's crazy.
But that does happen. I've actually had to go to the hospital several times for children who have picked up. Now they're picking up snakes, and they shouldn't pick up a wild snake unless you know. But there's no law behind it. There's no education behind it besides fear and misconceptions about these animals. Instead of like, hey, this is a venomous snake. They're protected. Don't touch a snake unless you know what it is. It's really that simple. And we've been having to do that. And I know that Wildlife Resources has done the same thing when they can, but I mean, it's, yeah. One of the counter arguments I get is, well, what if someone kills a venomous snake in self-defense? I'm like, well, they kill like non-venomous snakes in self-defense right now, and they're protected. And Daniel was like, well, who is that? Who did that? I'm like, is law enforcement really going to go after someone who killed a king snake? No, they're not. No. So it's not going to change anything to the negative, but what it will do is that if there's a law, most people will abide by it, and they'll think twice before getting the shovel, right? They'll think twice about it because they know that animal's protected, even if they don't like it. So, anyway, it's so funny that I'm coming.
Well, it would at least on a commercial scale, it would address the wide scale collection and roundup of the snakes. So
roundups could never happen again because those animals would be protected.
Right.
But yeah.
So we have a question. Somebody said, do you have any involvement in, do you work with Orient Society for conservation efforts?
We do donate to them every year. We've worked alongside them at like a lot of events. So yeah, we're very familiar with the organization. Now we don't work with them directly, but we've worked alongside them, and we are very familiar with their organization. They're great.
Yeah, I have two in Florida. I helped get them started on an indigo snake telemetry project down here and scout locations for indigos and stuff. And unfortunately, we're losing our indigos at a very rapid pace here in Florida. It's a really sad thing. Development's kind of out of control. We have a lot of issues with our gopher tortoises and our indigo snakes and lots of other species here. It's the same thing that's happening in Georgia.
Yeah.
Development's really started taking off up in Georgia also. So let me take a quick commercial break here. Some of you guys are asking about donating and stuff. We do have these Diamondback Terrapin shirts, and you probably saw I'm wearing the gray version. This logo was designed by Adeline Robinson, and we have the blue version also. So if that's something you're interested in, the shirts are $30 shipped, just flat rate. And if you want to send a CashApp, the CashApp address is pinned there. It's $ USARKFL. And then we also have our PayPal up there and a link to the website in Jay's pinned comment there. So if you send a payment, Elizabeth will get that. And just make sure you send your name, address, phone number, email address, and what you want. If you want gray or blue and what size, and we'll try to get those shipped out to you. We're trying to streamline our system here, and I think we've got it going, right, Elizabeth?
It's starting, but we're working. This is the beginning stages. We're working on a new system altogether, but this is the intermediate until we get to our final system. So
yeah, we want to eventually have a merch store up on the website and everything. So we're working towards that. We definitely need to do that. But yeah, if you guys are interested in supporting USARK Florida, there are lots of ways for you to do it there, and we really appreciate it. Also, share this out to your friends. We have some people coming in and out, but definitely if you're enjoying this, share it out. We'll be here for a little while longer. I thought Phil was going to come in and join us at some point. I haven't seen him yet, but I know he's busy. He's always on the run and on the road. So Phil's awesome, and you're gonna put Phil to work in Georgia pretty soon. It sounds like, Justyne.
I'm planning. So, either way, he's got to get ready.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, there was a. Oh, there he is. There he is. He's here. Phil says, "I'm here."
Hi, Phil.
Well, Phil, if you're welcome to come on anytime you want to request coming on if you have the time. So there was a bill that we found that was in the Georgia legislature in 2016. It never really went anywhere, but it was proposed legalizing corn snakes, and I think it was corn snakes, king snakes, and garter snakes, if I remember right. I think I sent you the text of that. That was really before social media had taken off in the same way that it is now. I think that if there had been more of a more promotion of that, it could have gone. Did I say 2016? It was 2006, wasn't it?
It must have been before that. 2016 is when I went to them proposing.
Yeah. I think it was long. I think it was 2006. It was much longer ago, but that's been brought up before. So there is definitely some demand for that out there. Somebody worked on it. So yeah, if we could get that rejuvenated, that would be excellent also.
My goal is not just for that. It's looking at the whole law. I mean, even like we looked over the law, we were reading it like as a group, and even DNR agreed like it's just outdated and it needs to be looked at again, but it's going to require a lot of work because it covers a lot more than reptiles, right? And that's the other part of this whole thing. When I went to DNR about the corn snakes and the venomous snakes, they said, like, pardon my French, but they said those damn hedgehog people are going to come in and ruin everything. I can't stand hedgehogs. I'm like, I don't understand what the problem is with hedgehogs personally, but I'll tell them to keep their hands off my bill if you need me to. But you know how it is. They add on to bills. And
yes.
So how do we fight this as a reptile community without involving other segments of the animal industry? Is, that's the part that I would definitely need some help from the national organization in that regard. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, it would be great if there was a give and take and not just a take.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What is that about?
We just, reptile people want to do our thing. Just leave us alone. And maybe, if you let us do our thing, then you have more chance of getting something done. But anyway, the way that I'm presenting this in a couple of weeks to this hearing is we're opposing the current ruling. We're asking them to throw it out. We want to create a new solution, and we want to look over the current state law. And if you read this part of my speech, I say, currently native venomous have zero protections, with some of these species being endangered, while non-venomous species that are of least concern have quite extensive protections based on a law that was passed before I was even born. So
yeah, this is 70s legislation here, and a lot of that came out of the kind of endangered species era. So a lot of states were doing similar things. I'm going to bring Phil on here. Phil Goss, president of USARK National, has just requested to join. There he is. There's Phil. Hey, Phil.
Well,
Hey,
hello,
sir.
everybody. Howdy.
We meet again. Hey, we were all up at Tinley, but we were never in one place at the same time.
No, Daniel's a busy guy. I tell you, when Daniel's at a reptile show, he does not sit still. He's constantly shooting video as something. So, yeah, you were getting around.
As much video of Phil as I can, because he gets us views. The ladies love him.
Yeah.
You know, so
I hide from the camera.
he runs away. I feel like the paparazzi with Phil now.
So, no, I've been watching the whole thing. So, awesome. Great job, Justyne. And if I can point out something really quickly, I know on my end, a lot of times I get asked about a state, you know, USARK group or whatever they want to call themselves. And Justyne and Georgia Reptile Society have absolutely nailed what most states should do. I mean, I always tell groups that very few states, unfortunately, Florida has to deal with it, but an ARC-like organization in each state is not needed. What you need is a good reptile society, because exactly what Justyne and the Georgia Reptile Society do, you know, they go out and do these educational events. That's especially huge when you're talking about native species. That gets you a network and connections with the state DNR agency or wildlife agency, whatever you have. And that's what's needed, because most states don't have constant battles like Florida has. And exactly what we're seeing unfold here, you know, Georgia Reptile Society has been around for 10 years and they have a relationship with DNR. And as Justyne pointed out, you know, DNR contacted her and said, let's talk about this. And that's what most states need. I know a lot of states have reptile societies or herp societies, but they're not super active. And, you know, they're kind of nichey and don't reach out and do as much as Georgia Reptile Society does. And, you know, again, it's going above and beyond just your little group of reptile people who maybe go herping with each other once or twice a year. And again, the model that the Georgia Reptile Society has put in place, I mean, that's what states need to be looking at rather than worrying about starting a, you know, a legislative or advocacy group like USARK.
I'm going to keep plugging Justyne, but you guys get in touch with her.
Yeah.
If you want to, I love this idea of really expanding regional herp societies and state herp societies. And Justyne, you were telling me that you've really kind of analyzed what works and what doesn't work. And that's an important thing to do. It's not just doing it willy-nilly, but really looking at the right way to do it.
Right. Yep. It's like the main thing about running herp society is to just not give up on it. It's just like running a business. You don't give up, don't look down, and don't look back. But I don't think that we're going to grow a bunch of herp societies because there's not a lot of people with that kind of ambition. It's scary, especially in today's day and age. Most people aren't willing to put things on the line, especially financially. And I've had to open my house to inspectors. You know, my house is the Georgia Reptile Society headquarters. So it's a lot to ask of somebody, and having a network is going to be important to really cultivate that and do it right. Lots of lessons learned on my end, but I also have, again, all those other presidents that I've connected with over the years that have been able to help me do it right. And yeah, but the events, going out to events has been our biggest thing. That's the best way to network. Having meetings is great, but you can have meetings at the events or after the events. And yeah, it's all paid off, I think. And anyway.
Yeah. I love what you guys are doing up there. And all of our Florida people will appreciate this. You've had some interaction with Jim Cantori from the Weather Channel, right?
Yeah, actually,
that's never good news for us here in Florida.
I know who he was. So I was like, you know, the Weather Channel actually called Zoo Atlanta, and my friend Rob, who's the curator of herpetology, called me and was like, hey, I don't want to do this. Do you want to do it? I'm like, heck yeah, I want to do it. So me and one of our leadership members at the time went on there, and there was Jim, and I didn't know who he was, but you could tell in that interview, if you watch it, they tried to like bait and switch, try to get me to like talk negatively about the animals, and I just wouldn't. So And also,
well, that's just what people don't understand, that there is another point of view.
Yeah.
Because they read the news and they see all the bad. And you brought a Burmese python and a tegu on there, right?
So this was before tegus were even a problem, and I made them let me bring a tegu because I knew it was going to be one of those animals in that same grouping, right? And it went over really well. But these animals, the python on there her name's Paula Dean, by the way, 'cause she's the color butteryall. That's what we always say. And she's been on several news channels, but she's also been on National Geographic in Critter Fixer Country Vet. So we're really good friends with them. And the first episode of season 3, Paula Dean is going to the vet to get dewormed after going to Renaissance Festival. And in that interview, or in that segment, I actually say these animals are not easy to take care of. And I meant that. And they kept that little blip in there. And I'm like, I'm not against people keeping these animals, but I want people to know they get very big and they take a lot of responsibility. Mm-hmm. So, if there's a presentation that Phil has seen that I've given to DNR where they have 3 concerns, their concerns are, and I'll quote that, I have the PowerPoint in front of me. They want to prevent invasives, they want to prevent disease, and they have welfare concerns. And so do we, and we've addressed them as a community. So like, again, they're punishing the community when the community is already answering these things and has been since our inception. We don't want to release animals in the wild. We don't want our animals to have disease or give diseases to any other animals. And we want to make sure that people who get these animals know what they're doing. And a lot of the breeders in the state that do specialize in Burmese, retic, anaconda, any of those big snakes, they interview people before they'll sell them an animal because they don't want it to go somewhere and be kept in a little cage or be malnourished or get out or end up on Craigslist. So it's already being done. But
yeah. What, Phil, do you have any more insight on kind of the future of this process in Georgia going forward, or?
Yeah, so every state works a little bit differently. So yeah, Justyne was right earlier. The way it works in Georgia is this is a rulemaking process. So Georgia DNR has the authority to amend this rule, and it does not have to go through the legislature. So the process, there's 4 or 5 different ways it works. South Carolina, for example, goes through a process like this, but then before it becomes effective, it still has to go through the legislative process as well. So it's actually a dual process system in South Carolina, which is actually a little bit odd. Usually the state wildlife agency either has authority to change the rule, or the state wildlife agency just goes through the legislative process. And then, like, again, Justyne said earlier, in Georgia, it's rulemaking authority. And if this passes, if they vote yes to it on October 25th, then it's going to be a new rule and it does not have to go through the legislature next year.
So with something like the non-venomous native snake protection, that was originally passed as part of a bill, as legislation, I believe. So would that then require legislative action? It probably couldn't just be altered by a rule.
Yeah, that one
is that correct?
That would have to be changed. I mean, DNR made that very clear to me. That one's a lot harder. But
because I think I remember John Jensen saying that at a presentation before.
Yep. It would be difficult, but I think it really needs to be changed, especially if we do want to propose a solution, it needs to be part of it. It needs to be a whole new set of laws that protect the animals that need it and allow DNR to add animals to that listing that are native, that become endangered, right? Because at the end of the day, like, we want endangered species to be protected in the state. Georgia has all of the ecosystems in our state. It's very diverse, and we care about it. So
it's so special. That's one thing I love about Georgia. Coming from Florida, I mean, Florida's amazing also, but Georgia's got like a little part of Florida almost, and you go all the way up to the mountains. It's got everything from the oceans to the mountains. That's just America, right?
Yeah.
Amazing rivers. I've spent a lot of time just out on rivers in Georgia and up in the mountains, and flipping tin for snakes back in the day. A lot of the tin is gone, but in the coastal plain in South Georgia, we used to find tons of king snakes and canebrake rattlesnakes and diamondbacks. Not as many as everything else, but it's an amazing state for sure. So I definitely hope that it can continue to be such a beautiful place and protect the animals that need protecting, but also allow people freedom where it should be allowed.
Yeah, and there's a way that we can get that to happen. You know, and to your point, like you said earlier about development, like hurting all the indigos, development's hurting our gopher tortoise, which is actually our state reptile. So we have land development, and like I remember this is something that I get emotional about too. When I was a little girl, I would always go hunting for box turtles after it rained. We could drive down the like the dirt roads of Locust Grove and some of the paved roads that were new and see like 20 box turtles within a couple miles. And now
that's awesome.
You're lucky if you see one, because all the developments just destroyed them all, and that makes me very sad, right?
Yeah, so, and they're for those of you who don't know, gopher tortoises were proposed for federal listing, and that decision came down from U.S. Fish and Wildlife this week. They rejected listing gopher tortoises in the eastern part of the range. So they're already federally protected in the far western part of the range, so west of like Mobile Bay and Alabama and Mississippi and Louisiana. But the proposal was for gopher tortoises in the eastern part of the range, and they did reject that. So it's up to the state agencies to protect gopher tortoises. And on one hand, I was a little conflicted because I didn't really think that gopher tortoises qualified under the listing guidelines. But on the other hand, I don't really trust these state agencies to manage them, because developers kind of have an outsized influence in our government, and everything, the rules seem to be created around that, allowing developers to do what they need to do. It would be nice for other industries like us reptile keepers. We're certainly not as big in industry as developers, but be nice if they cared about our freedoms and our ability to continue our businesses in the same way. Go
ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say in Florida, they're about to list the striped newt. In Georgia rejected striped newts for listing, and apparently there's one pond left in Georgia with striped newts.
Yeah.
If that's not an endangered species, what is? You know?
Yeah. No. You know, and then you're getting into this conversation, which is something that I've preached at events that we've done for GRS. When it comes to animal conservation, it's also a human issue, right? You've got people that are clearing land that was a habitat when you've got gentrification going on a few blocks down the road. You've got these old buildings that are falling apart that they don't want to do anything with because of greed. It's really sad. And then, you know, it just, I know that, like, I think I can speak for most of the people here. Most animal people I talk to don't like people, right? I'm the opposite. I love people. I think that when we care about animals, yeah, I get it. I guess I'm not saying I care about the developers, but I care about the people that need a house to live in, right? Or a nice place to shop, a nice safe place to shop. But there's ways that we could, you know, it's almost a bigger thing than just us.
Absolutely. I was at one of our animal industry technical council meeting, which is we have in Florida, we have this meeting of animal industries at the Department of Agriculture, and our representatives we actually have representatives on there for reptiles. That's Marcus Cantos and Eugene Bissett. And we are able to meet with other animal industries like the cattle farmers and even deer farmers and horse farmers and chicken farmers, and just discuss, you know, how our industries are doing, and communicate with Department of Agriculture on anything they can do to help. And I heard every single animal industry was concerned about out of control development. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was interesting that, you know, these are not folks that are for more regulations generally, but everybody was talking about how this affects our quality of life and just just the way we do things. And I think one of the horse farmers said, you know, we have to be for growth. We're for economic growth, but it has to be smart growth.
Yeah.
And that's what we see just kind of going out of control sometimes, is just growth without any regulation, or they've removed all restriction, and anything that helps the animals, they've tried to move that out of the way to make concessions so developers can keep making money. And, you know, they run a business. They should have input in the process and shouldn't be put out of business. But neither should we. Everybody should have a seat at the table. And unfortunately, it just seems like every city and county commission in Florida, and I'm sure it's the same way up there, is developers. And we also see that on our own wildlife commission here in Florida. So,
and we're also fighting. It's hard for us to fathom this, but there are people out there that literally could care less about what happens to animals, period. They just don't care. And those are typically the people sitting at the top of these developers. And that's a battle. But you have to make that animal matter to them. And even if that means on a monetary scale, or on like your kids, you know, care about it, or this will affect your children or affect their health. The venomous snake thing, one of the ways that I've seen that, you know, in our presentations get people over the fear and make people appreciate them a bit more, is all of the, you know, disease and cancer treatment you can get from venom, and how it can't be replicated in a lab, and how incredibly exceptional it is in its protein sequences and stuff like that. That is how you have to connect that animal to the person to make it valuable to them, other than just it existing, which is sad, but it's like, that's part of the education that I've had to learn when running a herp society. If I want to connect with an audience at like a local event, like a local fair, it's not a reptile show. We are trying to go to places where reptiles wouldn't be seen on purpose. Mm-hmm. We have to come up with ways to have people connect with the animals, even when some people don't think a reptile is an animal, for instance. I've heard that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's so important. We had in our prohibited species rules, they didn't allow, or initially allow, public contact. So that's something that USARK Florida was able to work with through the tag committee to have public contact allowed, so people could use Burmese or retics or tegus or iguanas in education, at least now, if they have the right permits. Yeah. So yeah, that's very important. Phil, while we have you on here, do you want to talk about anything else going on? Where you're all over all the time. Where are you headed next, and what are your main concerns on a national level right now?
Well, next, I guess I'm going to be headed to Savannah, Georgia. So I'm going to, I guess, head down there and see what's happening. We haven't done a lot of work in Georgia. So, I mean, that's just a week and a half away. We did just have a big win. I know a lot of this stuff gets lost in the shuffle, especially on local issues, but Sioux City, Iowa, if anybody was following that was a crazy ordinance. It would have made it illegal to keep 3 leopard geckos. I know a lot of times we talk about this stuff and a lot of people think, oh, it's just big snakes. Oh, it's just big lizards. It's just venomous. And that's not the case. I mean, this Sioux City, Iowa ordinance, that's literally what it would have done. It would have been illegal for you to keep 3 leopard geckos or 3 tortoises, or a combination of 4 animals. I mean, you couldn't have had 2 leopard geckos and 2 bearded dragons, and this affected parrots. They already have this silly ordinance in place for dogs and cats, and they would have expanded the definition of domestic animal in the city. And again, everything I'm saying right here, this isn't something that I'm making up. we have the alert on there, and it actually passed one meeting, and we stopped it at the second one. USARK was kind of trying to make it go away quietly. As far as I know, we were the only organization working on this matter. We were trying to do it quietly. We were working with someone there in the city, and it passed the first meeting. And then when it came between the first and the second one, it was only a week between the hearings. we put out our alert, and then enough local residents made noise that they voted no to it. So the first time it barely passed with a vote of 3-2. The second time the whole city council voted against it because of in-city opposition. So yeah, certainly people fall on this stuff. It's not always big snakes and big lizards. Sometimes this can be down to your leopard geckos and ball pythons and crested geckos and whatever you're keeping. So that was the.
Well, that's excellent. Not following that closely, but we certainly pay attention to everything that you have going on around the country, and I'm really glad to hear that bit of good news. Good news is always good.
We like good news.
I'm going to give Georgia Reptile Society another shout out. Contrary to Florida, so Florida, the cities can't pass local ordinances, and all the 49 other states that it doesn't work like that. Cities can always pass laws that are more restrictive than state or federal law. And in I don't know how many times I gave this presentation, but at the end of it, there was a Georgia Reptile Society picture where the mayor of the city was holding a hypomelanistic boa constrictor. And, when a group like Georgia Reptile Society goes out and they get the mayor of a city holding a constrictor snake, especially a large constrictor, obviously that mayor is going to have awareness if something like this, if another city council member presents something like this. So again, doing work like that and for herp societies to do work like that is it's huge, and it goes so far. So again, I know you don't have that luxury down there in Florida. You gotta, if it passes with FWC, it affects every city in the state, but other cities, you can do stuff like that and it has a huge impact.
Yes, definitely. I just turned off the comments, everybody, because I want you to be able to see Justyne and Phil down there. And they were hiding. And I saw that Justyne brought us out something to show us. So I'm excited to see this. Oh, real quick, though, Phil, you should know, when you came on, our viewers went up by 20 people immediately. Right? Did you notice that, too?
Yes.
I think it was just that time of the evening. People had a couple cocktails in, and they said, "Hey, let's watch some Instagram live."
Oh,
I want to see. Yeah. This is Mortimer, and he's
awesome.
Beautiful.
He's amazing.
He needs some nail trim and a beak trim really bad, but I take him to a vet to get that done. I don't like missing the quick I hate that, so I let someone else do it. But yeah, he's one of our ambassadors. I've had him, I think 9 years I've had him. But yeah, he was given to me by a biologist at an event. He was like, "Do you have a box turtle on your list?" I'm like, "I have it on my list, but I don't have one." And he's holding a box, and he reaches in and he hands me Mortimer, and he walked away. I was like, "Cool."
Wow.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So that's a beautiful turtle. I love the ones with all the red on their face and their arms. I'm a box turtle guy. That going back, that's what probably got me into reptiles. My dad brought a box turtle home that he found on the road in one of his business trips, and that's what got me into all of this.
He's not
so. I got a rant brewing, Daniel. So since there's a box turtle on the screen, so box turtles are such a good example of how I'll try and be politically correct, but it's kind of hard. State wildlife agencies are failing with box turtles. This is something that states, they want to do traditional conservation efforts, which is, ban collecting and keeping of these animals. And that may have worked 30, 40, 50 years ago, but as Justyne pointed out earlier, when we're knocking down their habitat, box turtles are such a good example of species that people can keep and breed and sell, and we don't have to collect them from the wild, but state wildlife agencies just aren't waking up to it. We're having the same argument with CITES, which is the Convention on International Trade on Endangered Species, where they want to uplist these animals, and then you can't ship even captive born ones out of the country.
Yeah.
Box turtles are just one of those things where wildlife agencies need to wake up and let people start breeding them. Here in Indiana, they've been on the state endangered species list for over 20 years, and we built a new extension to an interstate right through the middle of the state. And on one spring day, and this was after the extension on this interstate had already been up for 4 years, I think, I counted 24 dead box turtles on a 2-mile stretch of this interstate. So people are running over them every day, but I can't go collect them and breed them and even, work with Indiana DNR to do, you know, captive releases of anything I produce. You know, that's not how it works in Indiana. You can't keep them. You're not even really supposed to move them off the road, which is just silly. You can get in trouble for that. I don't know if I should say this. I got pulled over about 4 months ago because I made an illegal U-turn on the interstate to go get this box turtle off the road, and the officer said, "What are you doing?" He's like, "You made that illegal U-turn and you went real fast after you did." I said, "Officer, I saw a box turtle with his head up, so I know he was still alive, getting ready to cross the road."
Oh.
I said, "There's so many box turtles on this stretch that I see dead all the time, and they're a state endangered species." He did give me a warning, and I hope he went and found the box turtle. I told him where it was, but I had to drive like 6 miles down the road to the next legal turn rather than making another illegal one. But it's hard to see that and then be told that even if you're responsible and you want to, you know, help actual, you know, releases, if that's an option, you know, you can't even work with these species, but we're going to run them all over. And then we're not going to have any left in captivity because it's illegal in so many states to keep them.
And that's,
go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, I kind of get reports of some of the biologist meetings. Biologists from all different states are coordinating on all these laws and stuff. And the turtle biologists were freaking out because of this, what was the movie called? It was the Pets of Superheroes that came out recently.
Oh yeah, yeah, Super Pets.
One of them was a box turtle, and they were so worried that this was going to make people want to keep box turtles as pets. That was like a huge topic of concern.
People still want pets. That didn't. Everybody wants this. I mean, look at it.
Yeah, it's an amazing turtle, and this is a turtle. This is one of the highest value turtles being poached and smuggled out of the U.S. into Asia.
Oh yeah.
And us protecting them on a state by state level isn't addressing that at all. These people are smuggling. It makes the value go up. If anything, they should be letting us breed them and supply the market. And that's kind of why we worked on a proposal that included box turtles a few years ago. And now we've kind of done this terrapin thing in Florida that we're working on that we hope that they'll allow us to breed terrapins. And terrapins, just like box turtles, they're also illegally poached and smuggled, and they face a lot of threats. In Florida, 2 of our terrapin subspecies, by FWC's projections, their entire range is going to go underwater from sea level rise in the next 70 to 100 years. So their solution to this is to protect them and not allow anybody to keep or breed them. There's nowhere for those turtles to go because the areas they live in are all, if the water goes up, it's going to push into developed areas and stuff like that. So it's not like the turtles can expand their range. Whereas the ornate terrapin, actually, they project its habitat will increase, but that's just because there's a lot of available wild land. So even if the sea level goes up, it will flood areas and the terrapins will probably still be there. But yeah, the answer a lot of times is not clamping down. It's actually allowing things, but in a regulated way.
Yeah, in West Virginia right now, there's a proposal to expand an airport, and they want to knock down this place called Turtle Hill. And it's called Turtle Hill because it has this extremely high population of box turtles. And what are they going to do so they can expand the airport? They're going to, you know, knock down Turtle Hill and destroy this habitat for all these box turtles. It's just crazy.
That's tragic, just tragic. And a box turtle, one thing I said at an FWC meeting before, a box turtle doesn't run away. Like, people think of animals running away when there's this vision of the birds flying away and the deer run away. When a bulldozer's coming, a box turtle pulls its arms into its shell and it boxes up. And if there's a bulldozer rolling, it's done for. The box turtle is not running away to escape a bulldozer. So, I mean, we can tell in Florida, areas that still have box turtles are mostly areas that have never had the soil disrupted. So like tree farms and stuff where they've tilled the soil, mostly box turtles are gone from. Some animals, like a lot of snakes, will reinvade an area. They can destroy a lot of them, but they'll still come in and reinvade and reestablish. Box turtles don't do that so well. So where you tend to see them are just kind of untouched areas that haven't had some huge machinery rolled through at some point.
Justyne, it's 8:20. You've been on here for a while. Is there anything else you wanted to? Sorry, Daniel, I'm poaching.
No, it's okay. I talk a lot. Cut me off anytime.
Anything else you wanted to say about Georgia, the regulation proposal down there?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I need to send you the speech that I wrote. And Daniel, do you mind getting me your comments back before I send it to Phil?
Oh, sure. Sure. I just glanced over it. I haven't done any. I'm on the inside, folks. I have her speech right here.
Yeah. But no, I'm good. I was just going to add about the box turtles. We help out other agencies that do wildlife rehabilitation, because in Georgia, this is weird. And it makes sense, but it's also weird. I can't have an educator's permit and a wildlife rehabilitation permit at the same time. I can only have one or the other. So we have a very big lack of wildlife rehabilitators in the state. And so we actually have to take animals after they've been vetted and they're still undergoing getting injections. So we actually have a 3-legged box turtle right now that for about a month I had to give injections to because they ran out of room because there's nobody to help. So,
yeah.
And the laws are just all over, and that's part of it. So I don't rehab box turtles. I take in rehab box turtles that are still under treatment because they run out of space. And then I have to adopt those out to people with a permit, which is very hard to do. So I might sit on a box turtle for 6 months to a year before I adopt it out. And, wow. Yeah. And we don't get any compensation for that. Our organization doesn't. We do it just out of kindness, but, yeah. So the box turtle is very near and dear to me. And, I even know where this one's from. I don't know where he got it, but I know where it's from. This one's from Henry County, Georgia, because of the color, the markings and the colors, but yeah. So this is a sore spot for me too, Phil. I think they're great pets and their habitat's just not here anymore. So anyway, we can sign off now.
We're all box turtle fans here. Did you get that? Okay, I think she got a screenshot. I want to make sure they got a screenshot of you holding the turtle up with all of us here. So I'm going to put, Phil, do you need to leave us here?
I can stay on a little bit longer, yeah.
Oh, we got a question. Hold on, let me see. Oh, okay. I think we kind of answered that, so I'll skip that. But thank you so much, Phil, for coming on. I'm going to put the comments back up real quick here because I'm going to do another commercial. Or I'll let Jay, if you want to put up our Cash App again, I'll let you pin it. We try to fill these full of commercials. This is really just all about the money, folks. No, I'm just kidding. But if you would like to donate, we can always use your help. And Elizabeth, do you want to talk a little bit about that? I will show the shirt here. If you guys are interested in a shirt, they're $30 ship, just flat rate. But Elizabeth, do you want to talk about if people donate, what we're doing?
Absolutely. Right now, currently, of course, we have our Terrapin program that we are trying to get endorsed by FWC. We are also in the middle of a lawsuit that we are trying to basically overturn the prohibited species and hopefully go back to, well, we'd love to go back to a CSP program. Trying to get FWC to work with us, and it's been a very long road, and they would rather see everything prohibited and add more things to that list. So although as much as I've talked to them and said, lawsuits, nobody wins but the lawyers, in reality that is true. We'd love to work together with FWC and preserve our rights to have our reptiles. It's a very long battle, and under current leadership, it's been very difficult. And guys, just like Georgia, my passion is education. I'd love to be out here educating. And I think it all starts with education. What sells? well, let's talk about it. The movies, the media, everything in the past, it's the tragedy. You know, these big snakes and all the big scary things. And that's what gets everybody's attention. But reality, I mean, look at that amazing box turtle. I'm sitting here going, I just want to hold him with her right now. I got some of my babies behind me, but it's like, that's what we need to get through. And I'll give you an example. We had a news media come to a Repticon a couple of weeks ago that I was at, and he was doing an interview, and he was looking around like the whole time we're trying to do an interview, and he's like, oh God, he goes, they walked by me with a snake. And I'm like, it's okay. And so we got done with the interview, and I said, can I get you to come back to my table? And he looked at me and he goes, I don't think that's a good idea. And I said, listen, you took 15 minutes of my time. I'm asking for 2 minutes of your time in return. I said, I think it's a fair trade. And he's like, well, I guess if you put it that way. And we came back over there, and he ended up holding the snake. I mean, he was terrified. His palms were sweating, but I got him to touch it. And then he was like, that's not what I thought it was going to be. And then he held it. And he's like, this is what I've been terrified of? And I'm like, pretty much. I said, I hate to tell you, but there's 4-year-olds walking around with snakes in their hand right now. And he was like, I had no idea. He goes, I had no idea. When I walked in here today, I had no idea. And guys, that's what we need to do. We need to make those changes. And hopefully we can get past the lawsuits, and we can get into more education, and we can put the funds that we're raising towards something fun and do something wonderful with it. That's my ultimate goal. Unfortunately, Phil told me a long time ago, there's an ugly part of it and there's a fun part of it. And we have to deal with this ugly part of it a lot. And hopefully one day, though, Phil, my dream still is we're going to have fun with it too one day. So please donate, please support us, support USARK, support USARK Florida. I couldn't make it without Phil. I'm telling you right now. I promise you, I drive him crazy. We call him sometimes daily, but at least weekly. There's always issues and challenges throughout the United States. So Phil, thank you very much for all that you do, for sure. Gosh, I don't know what we'd do without him, but we have a big battle, but together, guys, together we will prevail.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a good place to leave it, Elizabeth. And I'm going to hide the comments here again real quick. Thank you for all of your support, folks.
I say one thing real quick?
Yes, absolutely.
A lot of people that are from Georgia. So, hi, guys. If you are not a member of the Georgia Reptile Society, please join. Because just like joining USARK or joining USARK Florida, if you're in that state or trying to support the organization, numbers matter a lot. And I saw some questions about, like, how do I start a wildlife program, blah, blah, blah. Join us, because we are a network of people. We have biologists, and we even have some DNR people that are part of our organization. So please join the Georgia Reptile Society if you live in Georgia.
Definitely.
My turn. So after Georgia Reptile Society gets this regulation in Georgia, there better be a huge flow of donations headed to the Georgia Reptile Society. So I will always give credit where credit is due. So I'm excited for to see what happens next week, and I'm hoping Justyne's right and we're on the same page. And again, if this regulation happens, it's going to be because of the Georgia Reptile Society. So send your donations, people.
Thank you.
Definitely. And all of you can message Justyne on Instagram, I guess, if you're already on Instagram. Pronounce your your name there.
Rosabuska. It's Rose.
So definitely get in touch with Justyne and look up. You guys have an Instagram too for the Georgia Reptile Society, but there are multiple ways. She's easy to find, folks. So there are multiple ways to get a hold of her. But I thank you so much, everybody who's participated, and thanks, Elizabeth, for coming on. We're not that far from each other, but we don't get to see each other that much, actually.
But we do
We're talking
on a daily basis.
Yeah, we saw each other in Illinois last. So, but thank you so much, Phil, and especially thank you, Justyne, for taking this time with us. And I hope that Florida and Georgia can continue to work together and support each other. And whatever we can do to help, just let us know.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
All right, we're going to sign off, guys. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.